World War II might feel like ancient history, but some of its iconic weapons are still in action today. From the deadly STG-44 to the reliable Lee Enfield, these vintage arms, including the Colt M1911 and MG42, continue to prove their worth in modern arsenals. In today's video, we're going to be looking at these heroes from war. First, we got the MG42. This German masterpiece wasn't just a weapon, it was the loud, obnoxious cousin at a family reunion who shows up, makes a scene, and leaves everybody talking. Designed as a cheaper, more efficient upgrade to the MG34, the MG42 became the gold standard of machine guns in World War II. It fired so fast that it earned the nickname Hitler's Buzzsaw. And no, that's not an exaggeration. The thing could spit out 1,200 to 1,500 rounds per minute. You didn't hear individual shots, it was just one continuous roar like an angry power tool gone rogue. The MG42 wasn't just about speed though. This baby was versatile. Its design allowed for quick barrel changes, which was crucial because firing at that rate turned the barrel into a literal branding iron after a few hundred rounds. A 6-man crew handled this beast, one guy firing, another feeding it ammo, and the rest lugging extra barrels, ammo belts, and probably a change of pants. The process was so efficient it was almost like watching a synchronized swimming team, except more explosions. But that insane rate of fire wasn't just hard on the enemy, it was hard on the gun itself. The barrel overheated so fast you'd think it was auditioning for a role as a stovetop. And then there was the bolt bounce, firing before the bolt fully locked. Imagine slamming your car door halfway closed and hoping it stays shut at 70 miles per hour. Spoiler, it doesn't. That's exactly what could happen with the MG42, and when it did, it wasn't pretty. Despite these quirks, the MG42 changed the game. German infantry squads built their entire strategy around it. The riflemen, they were basically there to babysit the machine gun, keeping its operator alive while it mowed down everything in sight. It wasn't just a support weapon, it was the star of the show, and oh boy, did it deliver. After the war, its influence was undeniable. The MG3, a direct descendant of the MG42, is still in use, but that's going to come later on in the video. Other modern machine guns, like the American M60 and the Belgian FN Mag, borrowed heavily from its design. Heck, some countries just straight up copied it and slapped a new name on it. Alright, it's a tail end of World War II, and Germany's scrambling to turn the tide. Enter Hugo Schmeisser, firearms genius who's about to rewrite the playbook of warfare. He takes a look at the clunky bolt-action rifles at the time, sips his German stout, and says, "We can do better." And oh boy, did he deliver. The STG-44, short for Sturmgewehr 44 or Storm Rifle, wasn't just a weapon, it was a revolution. This thing fired a 7.92 by 33mm Kurz cartridge, a smaller intermediate round that struck a perfect balance between power and portability. Unlike the hefty long-range bullets of the day, this round was optimized for the realities of combat, where most firefights happen within 200 to 600 meters. In other words, the Schmeisser realized you don't need a sniper rifle to win a brawl. With a 30-round detachable magazine and a fire rate of 500 to 600 rounds per minute, the STG-44 packed serious heat. And because the smaller rounds were lighter, soldiers could carry more ammo, a game changer in intense, arduous battles. It even featured select fire capability, letting you switch between semi-automatic and full auto with a simple flick. This wasn't just a gun, it was a blueprint for every assault rifle to come. Now you'd think a weapon this advanced would have made Germany unstoppable, right? Well, not quite. By the time it hit the front lines in 1944, the war was already slipping through Germany's fingers. Sure, about 425,000 of these bad boys were produced, but it was too little too late. The Allies were rolling in, and the STG-44 couldn't turn back that tide. But its impact didn't end there. Post-war, nations around the globe got their hands on captured STG-44s and took notes. While no modern army uses the STG-44 anymore, it still sees action in unexpected places. Syrian rebels found a stash of 5,000 of these relics in 2012, put them to work in their civil war. Even Ukrainian forces reportedly dusted some off during the Donbass conflict in 2014. Talk about staying power. A relic from World War II that's still putting in work today. Yep, a gun that's old enough to have grandkids is somehow still earning its keep, especially in places like Brazil where it's become a favorite of the police, but we'll get into that in a moment. The Madsen's design is unusual to put it mildly. If you're a gun enthusiast, picture this. It operates a bit like a fully automatic Martini Henry rifle. Falling block design that pivots up and down like it's trying to do yoga. Add a magazine tube and you've got something closer to a Spencer Bannerman pump-action shotgun. It's weirdly elegant though, in that I can't believe this works kind of way. The gun fires from an open belt, which might sound like a recipe for disaster, but the Madsen's engineers thought of everything. The barrel's short recoil system means it cycles back and forth less than the length of the cartridge. That means it's going to eject and chamber rounds. It's like watching a Rube Goldberg machine designed by someone who drank way too much coffee. Yet for all its quirks, it's reliable, a trait not lost on the Brazilian military police who inherited these guns when their other options, like the FN FALs and M16s, started falling apart. I mean, imagine this. You're in the favelas of Rio de Janeiro, a place where gangs rule the narrow alleyways. You hear the distinct morale-sapping roar of the Madsen. It's not just a gun, it's a statement. This thing fired at 400 to 500 rounds per minute with a range of up to 1,200 yards. Doesn't just neutralize threats, it announces its presence like a heavyweight boxer entering the ring, minus the ear biting. Now, if you're wondering how this dinosaur of a weapon has survived modernization, the answer lies in its engineering. Take it apart, and you'll see a bolt that pivots up and down, a ramming lever to load cartridges, and a mechanism so cleverly designed it makes you wonder if the engineers were part-time magicians. It's like the trilobite of machine guns, a fossilized design that's somehow still functional in an era of sleek, high-tech firearms. Sure, it's not the easiest to maintain or the lightest to carry, but the Madsen gets the job done. In 1895, the British Empire is at its height, and they've just introduced a bolt-action beauty that's about to change the game. Fast forward to the trenches of World War I, and this rifle's cousin, the Mark III SMLE, or Short Magazine Lee Enfield, is in the hands of British and Commonwealth soldiers. This thing can fire 30 aim shots a minute. The Mad Minute, they called it. Imagine a poor German troop hearing a barrage of fire, thinking they're under attack by machine guns, only to find out it's just some blokes with excellent trigger discipline. By the time World War II rolls around, the Lee Enfield has evolved into the rifle number 4. It's beefier, with a heavier barrel and simplified manufacturing to meet wartime demands. Still uses those 303 cartridges and has a 10-round magazine. The bayonet also got a makeover. They swapped the blade for a spike, which looks more like something you fend off a vampire with than a battlefield weapon. The British loved it. So did their allies in places like Canada, South Africa, and Australia. After the war, this rifle refused to retire. Commonwealth countries held onto it for decades, and in places like India and Pakistan, local militias still use it to protect their borders. In Afghanistan, it's got such a reputation for accuracy and range that some fighters prefer it over the AK-47. If they can't get their hands on a genuine Lee Enfield, no problem. Crafty gunsmiths in the Khyber Pass knock off replicas with impressive skill. It's so smooth, you can work it faster than most people can say bolt action. It's spring-loaded, so once you get the rhythm, you're chambering rounds like a pro. No wonder soldiers could lay down such rapid fire. It's also easy to strip and clean, perfect for the chaos of war. Of course, there's the charm of a rifle with history. Some of these guns come with custom carbons, mismatched stocks, or jury-rigged sights. Like each one tells a story. I saw one with a hand-carved deer on the stock. Personal touch from a soldier long gone. While finding ammunition for these relics can be a bit tricky, enthusiasts still bring them to life on firing ranges, marveling at the craftsmanship that stood the test of time. This bad boy was designed in the 1880s. Yep, just 2 decades after muskets were still in the hot tech on battlefields. Think about that. Humanity went from stuffing powder into barrels to a belt-fed beast capable of spitting rounds like it's angry at the sky. Now, the specific model I want to highlight is the Finnish-made Maxim 1910, a water-cooled Marvel chambered in 7.62 by 54R. Fun fact, this is the same caliber used by the Mosin Nagant, and the belts are even interchangeable, so in a pinch, you've got options. Imagine that level of compatibility in a war zone. Genius. And the mastermind behind this contraption? Sir Hiram Maxim, a mad lad who didn't just stop at machine guns. The guy dabbled in all sorts of innovations, from early inhalers to attempts at building helicopters. If he were alive today, he'd probably be building AI or rocket ships just for kicks. Oh, and get this, his son invented the silencer. Clearly, creativity ran in the family. Now back to Maxim. The water cooling system is a standout feature. Most modern machine guns rely on air cooling or barrel swaps to avoid overheating. But not this fella. Instead, it used a reservoir of water surrounding the barrel, acting like a radiator. In extended fights, they even hooked it up to an external tank to keep things cool and steady. A perfect example of form meeting function. Loading it was a bit of an art. You'd feed the belt from the right, pull the lever twice, and voila, it was ready to sing its deadly tune. And instead of ejecting casings from the side, it dropped them straight out of the bottom. Counterintuitive, sure, but it worked, and that's what matters. Despite being over 140 years old, versions of the Maxim are still seeing action today, most notably in Ukraine. Think about it, a machine gun designed when most people were riding horses is still doing its thing in the age of drones and smartphones. If that's not enduring craftsmanship, I don't know what is. The year's 1946, and the Soviet Union has just rolled out a beast of a gun, the D-44 Divisional Anti-Tank Field Gun. This thing was like the Swiss Army knife of artillery. It had an 85mm barrel straight out of the T-34-85 tank and could fire off 20 rounds a minute. Imagine 8 men sweating it out to operate this steel Predator, which could take down enemy armor at a range of up to 1 kilometer with its HVAP rounds. We're talking about punching through up to 180 millimeters of armor like it is cardboard. And if that wasn't enough, its BK-2M Heat FS round could crack through 300 millimeters. That's right, 300 millimeters. Tiger tanks, say goodnight. The D-44 didn't just stop at being a post-World War II relic, it made appearances in some of the most infamous conflicts in modern history. Korean War? Check. Vietnam War? Of course. The Arab-Israeli conflicts? Well, you bet. This bad boy got shipped off to everywhere from Egypt to North Korea, like a world traveler with a taste for chaos. In fact, the Soviet Union churned out over 10,000 of these guns by 1954, and some are still kicking today. In 2022, videos surfaced showing D-44s being used on the front lines of the Russia-Ukraine war. Ukrainian engineers even mounted them on old armored tractors. Picture this, a 1940s gun on a 1970s tractor blasting away in the 2020s. Talk about recycling. And if you're wondering about the lineage, the D-44 traces its roots back to the German flak 88mm anti-aircraft cannon. A gun so versatile it inspired both sides of the war. The Soviets took notes, added their twist, and turned it into an anti-tank powerhouse. The result? Well, it's a gun that's not just a piece of history, but a living legend that still makes its mark on battlefields decades later. A legend that's seen more action than a battered Hollywood stuntman. Designed by John Browning at the turn of the 20th century, this was the US military's answer to a problem they had with a .38 revolver. Namely, it just wasn't enough. After a bit of tinkering and a whole lot of genius, Browning came up with the M1911. Chambered in .45 ACP, it hit the sweet spot for power and reliability, making it a favorite for anyone stuck in the chaos of trench warfare during World War I. Fast forward to World War II, and this sidearm got a facelift, becoming the M1911A1. Alteration 1 for the curious. Changes included a shorter trigger, an arched mainspring housing, and better sights. These updates weren't just for show, they made the gun easier to handle, especially for folks with smaller hands. And let's not forget that extended tang at the grip. A lifesaver for those who didn't fancy getting a hammer bite. Now, during World War II, the production of the M1911A1 hit high gear. The US government roped in everyone from classic gun manufacturers like Colt and Springfield to wild cards like the Singer Sewing Machine Gun Company. Yes, Singer. As it turns out, Singer wasn't just good at making your grandma's sewing machine, they churned out 500 of these pistols with such precision that they themselves have become collector's items. Meanwhile, Remington Rand, a company better known for typewriters, produced over 877,000 pistols, cementing its place as a heavyweight champion of World War II 1911 manufacturers. This gun wasn't just a favorite among soldiers, it was versatile. Tunnel rats in Vietnam loved it. Special ops teams carried it, and even after it was officially replaced by the Beretta M9 in the 1980s, the M1911A1 refused to fade away. Still in use today with some elite units and law enforcement agencies. Let's not ignore its civilian appeal. Companies worldwide have crafted their own versions, making it one of the most customizable and beloved firearms in history. The M1911A1 wasn't just functional, it was efficient. Remington Rand, for example, managed to lower production costs from $39.93 per pistol to just $23.92 in 1942 by the war's end. Less than Colt. Talk about bang for your buck. It's the upgraded descendant of the infamous MG42, which we spoke about earlier in the video, aka Hitler's buzzsaw. Now, let's fast forward a few decades, throw in some NATO standard 7.62 by 51mm ammunition, and what do you get? That's right, the MG3, Merkel's buzzsaw. Yeah, it's weird, but also brilliant. Here's the deal. After World War II, Germany was like, well, we need a new military because Cold War vibes. And someone decided, hey, let's just tweak the MG42 instead of reinventing the wheel. So they took the original 8mm Mauser MG42, swapped into the NATO caliber, beefed up the bolt, and added some ergonomic touches. Voila, the MG43 was born in 1959, and it's been shredding belts of ammo ever since. Speaking of shredding, this thing fires between 700 to 1,300 rounds per minute, depending on the configuration. You could say it's like the Usain Bolt of machine guns. Unlike Bolt though, it doesn't stop after 100 meters. Let's talk features. A spring-loaded feed cover so you don't accidentally wreck it, a nifty belt loading system that's so smooth you'll think German engineers were bored geniuses, and sights adjustable up to 1,200 meters. Sure, 1,200 might be optimistic, but who's counting when you're spraying lead like a rock concert fog machine? And the barrel swap system? Man, it is just chef's kiss. Fire until it's hotter than a Nigerian sun, flip open the barrel door, toss the molten tube to your buddy, and slap in a fresh one. And don't forget the gloves unless you enjoy third-degree burns. While the MG3's been officially retired in Germany, this beast is still rocking in over 40 countries. Browning M2 50 caliber machine gun, affectionately known as Ma Deuce. Back in World War I, General John Pershing took one look at armored vehicles and planes dominating the battlefield and thought, we need a bigger stick. Enter John Browning, who scaled up his already successful M19 17 30 caliber machine gun, slapped a 50 caliber round in there, and voila, the M2 was born. Officially adopted by the US military in 1933, this beast was ready to chew through tanks, aircraft, and just about anything else you pointed at. The M2 is no lightweight. At 84 pounds, it's more of a gym membership than a gun. The AN variant trims down to 60 pounds, but don't get any ideas about lugging it around. This is strictly vehicle or fixed-mounted territory. In World War II, Ma Deuce was mounted on everything from jeeps to tanks to ships. She even graced the skies, bolted to fighters and bombers for both offense and defense. One word, versatile. Ever heard of the meat chopper? That's the nickname the M2 earned when mounted on the M45 quad mount. 4 Ma Deuces working together to shred anything that dared fly too close. And if that's not impressive enough, Marine sniper Carlos Hatchcock used an M2 with a telescopic sight during the Vietnam War to land confirmed kills over a mile away. Talk about multitasking. What makes Ma Deuce special? First, reliability. This thing could probably survive a tornado, an earthquake, and your uncle's grilling skills. Case in point, a 94-year-old M2 was brought in for refurbishment in 2015 and is still kicking. Second, accuracy. With a range exceeding a mile, Ma Deuce hits hard and hits far. And third, longevity. Designed in the early 1920s, this firearm's still a staple in the US military. And get this, they're not even looking to replace it. Why would they? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Born in 1919 as an idea and finally rolled out in 1940, this beast was like the Swiss Army knife of artillery. Designed to sling 105mm high-explosive shells up to 11,270 meters, it became the darling of infantry units across the globe during World War II. With over 8,500 units built by the war's end, this thing wasn't just a cannon, it was a battlefield buddy. What's wild is how the M101 kept reinventing itself. From Korea to Vietnam and even as recently as the Russia-Ukraine war. It's been sticking around like that one neighbor who's always like, just helping out. Lithuania even donated some to Ukraine in 2022, proving once again that this cannon has more lives than a cat in a safety net. Now let's talk upgrades. Enter the M102 howitzer, lightweight, agile, and with a swivel base that'd make a lazy Susan jealous. This bad boy was born in the 1960s to replace the trusty M101. But switching artillery is like switching barbecue sauces. Nobody trusts the new stuff right away. Eventually, the M102 earned its stripes in Vietnam, proving it could fire up to 10 rounds per minute and hit targets over 9 miles away with rocket-assisted projectiles. Fast forward to today, and the legacy continues. The AC-130 gunship got a fresh 105mm upgrade in 2022, combining the M102's DNA with modern tech. This flying cannon has supported missions from Desert Storm to the Middle East, making it the action hero of artillery, always ready for a sequel. The Russian machine gun that's been hanging out since World War II, like that one friend who still shows up to parties but somehow never ages. What's your secret, man? Let's talk about it, or as some of you might know, the Dinner Plate 28. Yep, the pan magazine on top looks like you're about to serve appetizers, except instead of mozzarella sticks, it's serving up 47 rounds of 7.62 by 54R. Bon appetit. This beauty, officially called the DP-27 because Russians like to keep us on our toes, was upgraded to the DPM or modernized, in case the original wasn't fancy enough. They swapped out its hunting-style stock for a pistol grip, because even in the 1940s, the Russians were predicting California's gun laws and wanted to flex. It's deceptively simple, but built like a tank. The pan magazine, pure genius. Uses a rotary feed system that's surprisingly smooth. Loading it's like winding a mechanical clock, except this clock goes ta-ta-ta-ta-ta instead of ticking. The magazine holds 47 rounds, which if you're keeping count, is like firing 47 Mosin Nagant rifles at once. Imagine being on the receiving end of that. Yeah, not your best day. But the Russians didn't stop there. They gave it a bipod for stability, except it's so wobbly, feels like it was designed during a vodka break. The barrel shroud? Nice touch, but grab the wrong way and you'll learn real quick why heat shields are a thing. Trust me, that's a lesson you only need once. Fully loaded, this light machine gun weighs as much as a modern sniper rifle. So, if you're hauling this beast, you've already won half the battle literally by carrying it. Despite all its quirks, the DP-28 is a workhorse. Still used today in some corners of the world, in fact. Efficiency meets durability wrapped up in a machine gun that's as iconic as it is functional. And that, folks, seems to be the Russian way. Back in 1941, the US Army decided the Thompson machine gun, while iconic, was simply too pricey at $45 a pop, meaning about $660 today. enough to buy a decent car back then or treat your entire platoon to steak dinners. They needed something cheaper but just as lethal. Enter the M3 grease gun in 1942, built almost entirely from stamped steel. It was as stripped down as a combat weapon could get. It fired 45 ACP rounds, the same as a Thompson, but cost less than half as much at just $20.94 per unit. Talk about a bargain. Soldiers initially were not sold on its looks. With its clunky design, it earned nicknames like Plumber's Nightmare and Cake Decorator. But the most endearing was Grease Gun. Well, because it looked like one. Rumor has it some soldiers joked about using it to fix their tanks during downtime. Despite its unassuming design, it proved to be incredibly reliable. It was compact, lightweight, and had a steady rate of fire at 450 rounds per minute. Perfect for tank crews, paratroopers, and drivers who needed something simple yet effective. The M3 wasn't without its flaws though. Its 30-round magazine had a tendency to jam even if a speck of dirt got inside, and the retractable stock was notorious for snapping off if dropped. Still, improvements came with the M3A1 in 1944, which removed the flimsy cocking handle and added features like a magazine loading tool and easier disassembly parts. This workhorse didn't retire in World War II neither. It saw action in Korea, Vietnam, and even the Gulf War in 1991. Fun fact, the Filipino Navy still uses updated versions with suppressors and red dot sights because, hey, one man's plunger is another man's gold. Also known as the Soviet bullet hose. That's right, a bullet hose. Because when this thing starts spitting, it doesn't stop until the job's done or the drums run dry. Think of it as a Russian version of a rock concert. Loud, relentless, and definitely not here to mess around. Now, designed in 1941, this little beauty was the Red Army's answer to how do we arm every soldier with a submachine gun without breaking the bank. And oh boy, did they nail it. Cheap to manufacture and absurdly effective, the PPSH-41 became a staple on the Eastern Front. Chambered originally in 7.62 Tokarev, a caliber that's as Russia as vodka and disappointment, this bad boy could hold 71 rounds in its iconic drum magazine. And if that wasn't your style, they had 35-round stick mags too. Variety's the spice of life even in war, I guess. But here's a kicker. This is an open bolt submachine gun. What's that mean? It means you pull the trigger, the bolt slams forward, firing as long as you hold it down or until you've run out of ammo, or Nazis. Efficient, brutal, and honestly kinda poetic. Oh, and let's not forget, the Germans loved this thing so much they started using captured ones. That's right, the PPSH was such a beast even the enemy was like, "Ja, we'll take that, Dankeschön." Did I do that right? They even converted some to use their MP40 magazines cause hey, why not? This bolt-action beast has been around for over a century with more than 37 million units produced. That is enough to arm a small country or a very prepared doomsday prepper. Designed in 1891, it's still in action today, proving that sometimes the old ways really are the best. Now, Russia had a bit of a production hiccup during World War I. They needed so many Mosin Nagants that when they outsourced the job to Remington and Westinghouse in the US, but when the October Revolution hit, Russia basically said, "Thanks for the 500,000 rifles, we're not paying." Classic. Even after rifles like the AK-47 came along, the Mosin Nagant stuck around. It saw action in Vietnam, Korea, Afghanistan, and even in the recent conflicts like Ukraine. Like that one grandpa who's still doing yard work at 90. Old, reliable, and just refuses to quit. And this rifle's got some serious history. It's named after Captain Sergei Mosin and the Belgian designer Leon Nagant. Originally, there was some drama over who deserved the credit, because nothing says military efficiency like a lawsuit. Eventually, they just smashed their names together and boom, Mosin Nagant was born. It wasn't just the military who loved this thing. Criminals got creative, sawing off the barrel, turning it into a makeshift pistol. Wasn't accurate, but when you're up close and personal, who needs precision? Let's talk versatility. During the Battle of Stalingrad, this rifle was a game changer, working on everything from tight urban corners to long-range engagements. One variant even helped take out 50,000 Nazi soldiers. Now that is efficiency. Over 20 countries still use the rifle to this day, and it's popped up in countless movies, including the very first Russian film, Defense of Sevastopol, in 1911. Spare parts? They got repurposed into other weapons like the iconic PPSH-41. But which one's your favorite from this list? Got a favorite Mosin Nagant story? If you've got a favorite World War II era firearm or think we left out a classic, drop your thoughts below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that little bell thingy. Or better yet, click on the next video to your right for more historical content.